All right, Craig Jones. Thanks for flying out, man. I appreciate it.
Good to be here. Good to be here in Vancouver.
How's it been so far?
Interesting. Spent a lot of time on Hastings Street,
Yeah, yeah.
doing a lot of things for
What were your first impressions of?
entertaining people.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful city. Beautiful. Reminds me of like Portland.
Oh, yeah.
Big fan of like Portland. I guess Seattle, same, very similar.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, interesting characters on Hastings Street.
So
Consider
this is your first time here?
first time ever in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've never entered Canada before because I travel around for jiu-jitsu seminars, and Canada's always one where you definitely should get the working visa because they'll bust you at the border. So I was always hesitant to come to a seminar run over here.
How popular is BJJ up here, do you think?
I think it's pretty popular.
Yeah.
Definitely in Toronto. We've got Stuart Cooper here in Vancouver.
Okay.
But yeah, pretty big in Canada.
Yeah, apparently there's ADCC sponsored tournaments here as
That's
well.
true. That's true. They got the trained assassins hosting events up here in the north.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that guy's going to respond to you or probably just leave it
I've
alone?
been trying to. I've been baiting him. He got in so much trouble for the original death threat that I think he's scared to follow through with anything now. But that just gives me, I can keep pushing him.
Yeah, just for context, because we talked about it earlier, but so you got a death threat from some dude who organizes ADCC events, and he just happens to be within 5-minute driving distance right now.
Yeah, yeah. So I've come to him. Or maybe it's an inside job. You've set me up. Eh?
Yeah.
But yeah, this father of two, civilized man from Denver, Colorado, threatened to kill me for hosting a rival grappling tournament on the same day as his tournament. And then he blocked me on his event page. So I didn't even know his event was on. And then we realized his promotion fight, the Wins in Town, just happens to be the same weekend I'm here.
Oh,
So
Jesus.
all of our lives could be in danger.
Yeah, watch out. So, just for a high level, if the viewers don't know who you are and you were to give like a summation of who is Craig Jones, what you're about, could you just give like a quick intro?
A quick intro, yeah. Jiu-Jitsu athlete, originally from Australia. Lived in America for a while. Now I'd say I'm probably homeless, just traveling the world aimlessly, trying to move into the influencer role. Much more enjoyable life, I would say, than wrestling dudes for a living. But yeah, long history in the sport, in the sort of the big events, the super fights. Now, for this upcoming tournament, I've basically gone head to head with the Olympics of our sport, which just like the real Olympics, doesn't pay the athletes any money. So I had a long sort of not even a long standing, this was like done on a whim. I was like complaining about athlete pay. An anonymous donor contributed $3 million to me and he's like, host a tournament the same weekend. That'd be hilarious. So
I thought it was like the million in cash you brought to Rogan. Did the stakes get higher from that guy who donated or
here's the thing. The million was a prop. It was a prop. It was like a proof of that I actually had the money because most people don't believe.
At that time, the total amount was still 3 million though?
Still 3 million.
Okay.
Yeah. So it started with he sent crypto to another one of his crypto accounts. He gave me the screenshot to be like, look, show people you have $3 million. And then obviously crypto can be a bit dicey.
Yeah.
So when I went on Rogan, I didn't have the 3 million, but a sponsor of mine, shuffle.com, a gambling website, connected me with a local guy in Austin that had access to that type of cash. And he was a fan of Joe Rogan. So we're able to get $1 million cash in hand from a guy I've never met before. He just showed up at my house with $1 million, which is fearless on his behalf. But I could have taken fake money, but the last thing I wanted to do was dump it on the desk and Rogan goes, this money's fake.
Sure.
Because he did look at it to make sure it was real. And then obviously, this guy told me not to tell anyone that I had $1 million coming to my house, but I couldn't resist. I told everyone. I took photos of it. It's definitely not the safest course of action.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy took his money back. He had trouble getting it out. It's actually hard to get $1 million out from the bank, even if you have it.
Yeah.
So he told his bank, he's like, I need $1 million for this Thursday or something.
Well, especially in cash too.
In
They're
cash.
probably like
Yeah, they're like,
17 layers of authentication to get that out of there probably.
but they said no to him. And he's like, give me $1 million.
So
on
do they
this
even
day.
have that much cash in a bank? I don't even know these days. You know?
Yeah, I asked actually the guy that originally funded me, and he's told me stories about how he's gone to banks and it's just the ultimate baller move. And like, how much money do you have in your safe? I want to take all of it. I'm like, I fucking wish I had that power. But
Yeah.
this guy's bank said no. He said, get it, or I'll go to a bank that can get it. And they suddenly had the cash for him. But apparently, it's like a whole bunch of procedures. All the bank staff had to be there. A bunch of Austin police had to be there.
Wow,
And
that's crazy.
I didn't even like, Rogan hit me up. I don't think he believed me. Rogan's like, do you have security? I was like, no. And he's like, all right, I'll send my security to escort you to the studio. And even his security and stuff are like, what the fuck is this? Hey,
Yeah, because they have huge people come into the studio all the time, and that's well, obviously I don't go in with security, but I mean it's pretty chill normally. You walk in, guys are just chilling there. What's up? No one's like coming
it's a
through
huge
with
hazard, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, Rogan did obviously lie to me because he said, "Oh, I've never seen $1 million before," and I was like, "That's like me saying I've never seen steroids before."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. So, okay. So circling back to BJJ and your entry into this sport, what drew you to this over other sports or combat sports in general?
Yeah, good question. Growing up, I played a little bit of basketball, a little bit of Australian rules football. Was not good at those things. I came into jiu-jitsu at a time where it wasn't big in Australia, so there was like an opportunity there.
But like, why did you go into
Oh,
it?
my cousin trained it at the time, and I was watching UFC,
Okay.
so I was like, that seems like a fun thing to do.
But if you're watching UFC, would your first inclination, I suppose if you know somebody who's doing it, but typically wouldn't it be, okay, I want to learn how to kickbox, or I want to learn how to Muay Thai, or like...
For sure, and I did a little bit of that, but at the time in Australia, MMA was illegal, so
wow.
there was no like avenue to even pursue that.
Huh.
So like when I first started, and then obviously,
Dude, why is everything illegal in Australia?
yes, nothing. I mean, everything's legal here. You get crack on the streets. I love it, But but
You just can't post news online here.
you can't.
You can take gear and do a bunch of illegal drug shit, but you can't access news networks that aren't Canadian.
Really?
Yeah. Try and access a news network from your phone with an IP address here. It will block you.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Fuck, it's like Russia, hey.
Maybe soon. I don't know. It's a little concerning. I think the first thing Rogan says to me every time I go on, he's like, "Are you still in that shithole?"
Oh,
I'm
really?
like, yeah.
I mean, Hastings looks like some parts of Austin, honestly. It's like homeless people taking
like
over
homeland.
some. Yeah, but Rogan's not a fan of Canada, right?
No, he hates it. He said he will never come back here. And he makes it a point to tell me every time how bad it is. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like the cold weather. Other than that, it seems like a lovely place.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you ever leave Canada?
I'm sort of trapped here in a way, which is unfortunate. It's like the way they've set up the taxation system is such that you have to pay tax on unrealized gains if you leave. So hypothetically, if you own companies, you literally have to pay what they are valued at without actually selling them when you leave.
What?
Yeah, it makes no sense, right?
You can't escape, hey?
It'd be like, for example, let's say you have your house appreciated in value from like, I don't know, you bought it for $1 million, now it's worth $3 million. You still have the house, you haven't sold it. But when you move out of the country, even if you want to keep the house, you have to pay the 2 million capital gains, even though you haven't sold the house, to get the money to pay the capital gains.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it's like anything you own, you're taxed on because they don't want you to, like, I don't know, leave without paying what they're owed for the value accrued while you're in the country. So it's kind of like if you're a business owner, it's kind of impossible to leave if you have any level of success where you haven't, like, it's not typical for a business owner to build a business and then sell it for some huge amount and then have the money to, do these kind of things flexibly. Typically you will try and, like, hold assets and hope they go up in value, even if it's the stock market, but you're not going to have like the money accessible to liquidate to just pay it and leave typically. So it's kind of a weird system that I'm sort of stuck in.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously that's good and bad for the country. The bad part is they're stuck with Drake. He's stuck here.
Yeah. Like, I think there's a way I could absolutely live somewhere else, but similar to what you implied, like, it's nice. The environment is great. Like the mountains, the water, the landscape. I love it. But it's like the taxation and some like the government stuff, like the censorship is a little bit, I don't know. Like, it's not extreme enough that it's affected me dramatically, but it's like going down that road where it's concerning. But yeah, anyways, a bit of a diversion.
That's wild, though.
Yeah.
You can't leave. They won't let you go.
Yeah, I think the US has their own, like, it's not the same, but you would have to like denounce your citizenship to get out of the tax system there. So it has similar issues in different ways because then you can't really get back into it maybe as easily.
Yeah, I've got a green card, and I could get my citizenship, but I'm really contemplating right now if I do it, because you are on the hook for taxes for the rest of your life, unless you renounce U.S. citizenship.
Yeah, like people from the US, like influencers who travel, some that live in Dubai sometimes, like they're still paying the IRS even though they live in Dubai and get all their money through like influencer, whatever it is that they're paid by, sponsorships. Even if it's sourced like Dubai based, I'm pretty sure the IRS takes their cut because you have to literally give up your citizenship to get out of it.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, do you want to go that far or no, kind of thing.
I think best bet's like living in Puerto Rico, you get that 4% tax rate.
But then you have to live in Puerto Rico.
That is, I lived there for 6 months.
How was it?
Difficult, yeah.
Was it okay?
No, it was challenging. We had to get out of there. You were like, maybe they put the taxes up and some things work, you know? There needs to be some balance, you know? Like, you can't get anything done over there. Impossible. Post office, 7 hours, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah, were you saying something about getting like a mailbox open?
Yeah, couldn't do it. Could not do it. It was, no one will help you, hey. Problem is that if you're a white guy in Puerto Rico, they think you have
Oh, they assume you're like there to skirt the tax system.
Yeah, you're like, fuck, I wish.
Yeah. Is anyone still there that was there with you at the time?
Well, the guy that actually runs ADCC, that's where he lives. So we were kind of going there to open a gym with him, as corrupt as that sounds in retrospect. But we got out of there. We couldn't function. I think to live in Puerto Rico, you have to have like 50 to 100 million, live in this Ritz-Carlton area bubble, Dorado Beach, really nice. But if you live anywhere outside of that, it's like you're battling the same stuff you would in Southeast Asia, where just very few things function. You know, it's like...
And you have to prove you're there for at least 6 months, right?
6 months. You have to be there 6 months and 1 day, and they track that. But they do that in the US even. I think like if you California, like obviously California's high tax rate, so they really track where you are to determine whether you have to pay those state or potentially city taxes. They're onto you, the IRS. Worse than its girlfriend.
Yeah. So like hypothetically, I could live somewhere for 5 months and, you know, just shy of a day, but I would still be paying the taxes here, I guess. So I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll look into it more, but I'm kind of...
Well, at least they're going to good use. The crack cocaine is fucking great quality.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so BJJ, I totally derailed. You got into it because you knew somebody was doing it, and MMA is also illegal. So
it was legal, and it was also a bit of a scarier prospect too. I used to study psychology, and I remember learning about sort of like traumatic brain injury and just thinking about, holy shit, like you'd want to get paid good to be risking that. And then most of those guys get paid fucking nothing. So jiu-jitsu guys don't get paid much either, but you're only risking your limbs, not so much your brain there. So I was really drawn to that. I always thought like if I made it big in in jiu-jitsu, and then someone threw a crazy offer at me, then I'd do MMA. But other than that, risk versus reward.
Who do you think would actually be fit enough or suitable to make that crossover and do well?
Gabby Garcia.
Yeah.
Gabby would be the one. Yeah, I'd fight her for sure. Maybe that's the rematch after the grappling match.
What do you think her actual stats are natty though?
Her natty stats?
Because she would have to be like if she was in the UFC, for example. Rigorous drug testing.
That is true. Is it rigorous in your opinion?
More so than many other professional sporting organizations. And it seems like they care enough to try and do it well. Put it that way. You can get around it for sure, but it's not the easiest sport to get around.
It's easy to get around it if you live in the mountains of Dagestan, I imagine.
It's probably easier, yeah.
How do they find you? You know what I mean? But if you live elsewhere...
Yeah, like some of the logistical and political implications of it for randomized testing, it gets a bit more problem. You know, obviously there's some advantages.
Yeah. The trade-off is living in Dagestan. I guess it's like Puerto Rico.
Yeah. But what about for the guys? Is there anyone you think that is seen as an elite BJJ athlete that can make a crossover that would be worthwhile?
Or just generally within our sport?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Nicky would do well because his skill set, he's got the wrestling base, could do well. And I think like if you look at MMA as a whole, the weaker divisions, you have to say is probably towards heavyweight. because a lot of those big athletes are doing more higher paying sports, you know? So I think, like, generally speaking, if you're a big athlete in jiu-jitsu and you have a wrestling base, you could probably transition pretty well, get paid. But at the lighter weight range, I mean, we got the Rotolos, they're looking to transition to MMA. They're probably two of the best guys in our sport. They're good enough and young enough that they could, but most of the time, like, guys will hit their peak in jiu-jitsu 28, 29, 30. And that's hard to now learn striking and wrestling. Not impossible, but pretty damn challenging.
Is there anybody that you think it would be, like, for example, Nicky Rod, would it be worthwhile for him, do you think? Or do you think he should just stay the course with what he's doing?
That's a good question. Depends if he wins the $1 million tournament. If he
True, yeah, because I guess it's worth it now to...
Yeah, if he takes the $1 million, not many MMA fighters are clearing. You know what I mean? It's like the upper echelon will clear $1 million. So if he wins the $1 million, jiu-jitsu pays the bills. But I think he has been offered money to fight a bare knuckle fight. So he's had offers before. So I imagine he's probably had some MMA offers.
It's like, how far down the ladder do you have to, like, how much grandfathering into a higher status position do you get via your BJJ accolades, if any? Do you know?
Not many, unless you have some good social media skills, I think. And that's why I've fully...
Like, I wonder, for hypothetical sake, if Nicky Rod or Gordon Ryan were to get put into MMA, like, how elite of a matchup could they get on day one?
Yeah, true. Off the bat, it would be sick to have them face each other in MMA.
Oh, yeah, true.
That'd be huge.
Yeah.
Like, I think something like that could happen, and then that would be hilarious.
Dude, that's the real super fight is, you know, you have the winner of CJI versus the ADCC winner fighting actually.
Yeah, in a bare knuckle. Bare knuckle would be good.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd love to watch. That'd be hilarious to watch. Be better to watch than participate in, you know?
Yeah. But for you, so you wanted to avoid, you know, brain injuries. It seemed like it was a good path still. What age did you start again?
I started at 15, but honestly, I started with pretty low aspirations because there wasn't much money or like...
Yeah, I'm like trying to, because you were talking about monetizing it. I'm just thinking, like, how would you even have conceived, oh, you know, if I take this all the way, how much can I make? Because it's like, presumably there wasn't like...
There wasn't any. But I always, when I looked at it, I looked at like retired MMA fighters were in a much worse position to open a sort of a business in terms of like, it's MMA gyms are less successful than jiu-jitsu gyms. Jiu-jitsu is like a cult. So it's like, you don't have to be the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world, but you could still operate a pretty good jiu-jitsu gym. And in essence, the theory would be to avoid real work because you're doing what you love. But really, it's still going to be real work. But when you're young and you look at an office job or teaching jiu-jitsu, you're going to be pulled in that direction. So I thought, not targeting the elite of the elite, but there was a better career path as a jiu-jitsu guy than an MMA guy.
What are some misconceptions you think people have about BJJ that are, I don't know, just like a few of the top ones? Like sometimes you hear it's ineffective for self-defense, or you need to be really athletic to be good, or like, what are some of the misconceptions you think would be good to dispel?
I mean, misconceptions. I think that people think it isn't gay. I think it's pretty gay. You know, it's about as close to a gay activity as you could do without fully crossing over there. The misconception, it's not a misconception, but a lot of people think they have no social skills. I would say that's completely accurate. Jiu-jitsu guys will defend that to the bitter end. But I would say there's a correlation between inability to hold eye contact and success in the sport. That's where all the autism jokes come in. But yeah, in terms of misconceptions, it is a cult. Seems like a cult. Most of the jiu-jitsu gyms around are cults. The jiu-jitsu coach sort of becomes like he'll train doctors, lawyers, like people with really incredible jobs, but he'll be giving them life advice in all areas, all facets. You know what I mean? So it's like the jiu-jitsu gym owner becomes this cult-like figure. Misconceptions. No, I mean, they're pretty accurate. You know, you walk into a jiu-jitsu gym, you see how weird that shit is. Your friends talk about it. You listen to how weird it is. It sounds to you. You're going to be pretty damn accurate with your instinctual thoughts. But obviously there's something good there because everyone gets addicted to it.
All right.
They hang in there.
So, okay. So let's just say if somebody has no desire to compete in actual tournaments, but they're actually looking to find a discipline or a fighting style that They just want to be able to feel like they can protect themselves when they go out in public, kind of thing. What do you think are the top 3 skills to learn in descending order of importance?
For someone that's like trying to learn to defend themselves in the streets, I mean, I guess like avoiding dangerous situations and stuff, like the most obvious stuff. I
Like
guess.
plan properly.
Yeah, planning your
It's the number one.
seeing how drunk you get and stuff like that. But if it's like unavoidable, like I mean, it's really jiu-jitsu's going to save you, but it depends how many guys, how many people you're battling against here. Like, do they have weapons and stuff like that? Like, in terms of a street fight, oh man, it's tough. Like, obviously, if you train in a sports jiu-jitsu environment, you're still going to develop that physical wrestling strength. It's different, like guys that lift a ton of weights still come into the gym, and although they feel strong in certain areas, they're not wrestling strong. So no matter how you train jiu-jitsu, whether it's sports focused or not, as long as you're like wrestling hard every day, it gives you a certain type of strength that I think would transition very well to any sort of physical altercation. Because it's like, obviously you look at jiu-jitsu, these bunch of gay guys pulling guard, but they're not going to do that in a street fight environment,
Yeah. So, okay. So if we were going to say the most important, if we're going to talk about boxing, wrestling, like all the different disciplines you could be focusing on, you would start with.
I mean, honestly, I would probably start with wrestling because those guys generally have the most athletic gifts in terms of being difficult to control. You know what I mean? So if someone grabbed them, if someone started to throw a punch, they could take them down quite easily, control that. And if someone were to get them down, they're quite good at getting back to the feet, scrambling and standing back up. So I think that would be number one. Honestly, they're all pretty valuable depending upon the situation you got involved in. If you were to just have boxing skills and you happened to fight a guy with any form of grappling skills and he gets a hold of you, you're in trouble.
What do you think is the most ineffective form of combat that is perceived to be actually useful?
Ooh, I mean, any of the traditional ones, like Taekwondo. I mean, you might be intimidated if someone throws in a Taekwondo stance or some karate stance out. You might
be honest, no shit.
Yeah, it might make you sort of feel like it's such a bizarre set of movements. You might not want to get involved with that type of form of combat, but that would be completely useless. I mean, everything that UFC 1 showed, how all that weird shit doesn't work, That would have been amazing to exist in those days. All the traditional martial arts guys thinking that their shit was so deadly, nobody could stop them.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have met those people before UFC 1 occurred.
Yeah. No, yeah. Some of them to me, like there's Instagram pages dedicated to just some of the most nonsensical things and watching it. It's baffling. Like you said, the cult leader, obviously for actual fighting disciplines that are impactful and useful, I get it. But then there are some, I'm like, how could you convince this many people that this, it'll be like mind control shit. You use the force on a guy and chuck him across the room. Like, I don't get that stuff, dude.
I don't know how they pull that off.
I don't get how they pull off convincing people that it's useful, or if it's more fabricated that it seems like people follow them.
Yeah, I want to know that conversation where he's like, hey, we're going to do a demonstration, just go with it.
Yeah.
Like, what black power does he have on him to do that in front of fucking large groups of people?
I wonder if that's similar with like hypnotists to some extent, where they'll just like snap and like knock down 20 people or something. It feels like that when they're doing the fighting.
I wish that power was real, hey.
Yeah.
I've tried to investigate all forms of that stuff. Like, I was just in Romania and we went to a gypsy witches ceremony.
Yeah.
It was, I didn't feel too much, to be honest. But they were good people. They were cool people.
Yeah. Yeah. I know nothing about like psychological stuff like that, but I imagine there's like a certain mindset that you would have to be able to be affected significantly. Like the hyper skeptical, I can't imagine it's the hypnotism stuff. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Like, not everyone is joining Scientology.
Exactly.
I wonder how they get them.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about wrestling as the top one. And for you, competing, like you kind of knew there wasn't money in it. So what compelled you to start competing in competitions in general?
I mean, I think it's just for your own sort of bragging rights, like your goals just shift. Like when I was training, I was like, I want to be the best guy in the gym. And then you're like, best guy in the city, best guy in your state, And then slowly the goals rise up. Like, you'd have to be a Tony Robbins-like character to start. The crazy guys like that exist. They walk into the gym, they have never trained, they're like, I'm going to be the best guy in the world. And you're like, something's wrong with you. You know what I mean? Like, let's set our target a bit lower. So I always started small and just tried to accomplish goal after goal, sort of in my climb to the top or near the top, basically. So that's sort of, the competition aspect. It is fun. It is fun to go out there and compete. Obviously, it's very, very stressful. It's more fun when you don't have a name, because you dare to just go out there with nothing to lose.
Right.
But as soon as you have the name and your income relies on maintaining your position in the sport, you feel more pressure and it's more difficult to compete. So a lot of like up and comers or people at seminars will ask me, how do you deal with the nerves? How do you control it? I'm like, bro, it only gets worse. You know, like no one cares for you now. Like, I go out there and mess up. Everyone laughs at me, sends me messages, you idiot, you loser. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, only your family is saying that to you now. Yeah. But for me, I have to deal with the internet.
So the B team, was it sort of derived from playing off, like you were striving to be the best and to have the bragging rights. And then was it that you continuously came second, or like, what is the B team conception?
That's true. And it's also a marketing strategy. I actually heard there was an expression, a Russian guy told me this, and he said to me, he goes, if you claim to be the best, many people will argue with you. But if you claim to be the second best, no one's fighting. No one's like, hey, bro, I'm number two. You know what I mean? So you get this brilliant strategy of where you can just deem yourself second best in the world, and absolutely no one will argue with you. So we really went down that route. I also happened to win silver in every tournament I ever did. So it fitted quite well. But it serves me well now. Even when I don't face some of the best competition, people will still be like, that's the second best guy in the world.
Yeah, no, I could actually see that for sure. Because like Gordon, for example, is constantly having to defend himself seemingly.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I guess the more you defend yourself, the more it compels people who don't like you to lean in, and then, to challenge you and like goad you into arguments. But again, no one complains. No one's like, fuck you, I'm number two. Like, that's not something you can argue over. So it's almost like, and you probably have way more time to do actual useful things with your day, because you're not on Instagram having to argue about how you're the second best.
No, I argue about other things. I argue for the love of the game, but not over second place.
Do you get into Instagram beefs?
No, I try to enjoy it. You know what I mean? I try to make fun. Like, Jiu-Jitsu was always very serious, very weird, so I tried to get involved and just poke fun at how strange it is. You know what I mean? Especially when guys...
So would you say you're the least weird in BJJ?
I'm probably the most weird, but I like to poke fun at the like traditions of the sport. You know what I mean? Because guys in sport take themselves very serious. I would say Americans take themselves pretty damn serious. So it's good to cruise in there with some banter. And I'd also say the Brazilians, in their own native language, they take jokes very well. They're quite good at banter. But obviously, as they transition to the English language, sometimes things get lost in translation and they bite. They bite on some of the playful banter, and obviously they have a lot of respect for the origins of their sport. So I saw an opportunity to come in and sort of poke fun at it, like make fun of the fact that it's like everyone looks at jiu-jitsu again and thinks it's gay, and everyone would fight it. And I was just like, well, they make a pretty good case, and then obviously the people that take the sport very seriously get very upset about that.
So probably a question that some people are thinking, similar to is you refer to it as jiu-jitsu, but a lot of people call it Brazilian jiu-jitsu and BJJ. And we're talking about just now the Brazilians who have this, they have tradition and whatnot, the integrity of it. Like, what is the difference between, like, how was the inception of BJJ to begin with, and why is it called Brazilian jiu-jitsu and evolved to where it is now? And why do you specifically call it jiu-jitsu instead of...
And so, it's a good question. I guess what happened was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was popularized by the Gracies. The Gracie family in Brazil did all these challenge matches proving grappling was number one. I'm no historian of it, but I know a lot of the submissions are borrowed from judo. I know the original judo style, original form of judo before they changed the rules to favor the big throws and stuff, did appear to be more like modern day jiu-jitsu where they spend more time on the ground. So to say Brazilian jiu-jitsu is just paying respect to the Gracie's family and the country of Brazil for really popularizing that style of grappling.
Okay.
But I mean, the roots of grappling, obviously you got catch wrestling, you got traditional wrestling, obviously dates back to the original Olympic Games and stuff like that. But we just
Right.
say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really what the sport and the kimono is referred to, but it's just pure laziness. I'll just say Jiu-Jitsu.
Hmm. So I did ask about how popular you think it is here, and it was kind of interesting because the other day I was at the beach, and typically, like, I guess my demographic doesn't skew that young, but it's not common that I have, I don't know, like 10-year-olds come up to me. I had this group of 4 kids run up to me. Like, are you a YouTuber? And I guess they recognized me off some videos. I said, yeah. They weren't like super familiar with my channel, but they knew they saw me somewhere on YouTube. And I don't know how it can't, I think it was just a flat out question. They were like, how do we optimize? Well, I didn't say optimize. How do we build muscle for jiu-jitsu the best? And I was like, that is a wildly specific question. And also a weird coincidence because I've never really had anyone ask me that. I was like, oh, have you heard of Craig Jones before? And they freaked out. And I was like, this is crazy because in general up here, like this wasn't like Vancouver either. This was like many suburb cities higher where it was just this random lake and these kids. And they were pumped to hear that I'm doing a podcast with you. And I told them, well, first they actually said, can he come here and do training? I was like, he's probably a bit busy, but I said I would ask you as far as maximizing training for, because I'm assuming, and this is probably a good part answer to the question, is it's not just about building muscle, whereas I see a lot of really jacked out of their tree athletes that doesn't necessarily translate to you're going to win. Like, what are the things you think should be focused on if you were to hypothetically go back in time and tell younger you, like, how do you expedite your progress as fast as possible? What do you focus on?
Honestly, I would say just training in such a way to avoid bad injuries. So some guys get so pumped up for training and they want to fight hard and they want to beat their training partners that they just get injured all the time or they're injuring their training partners. Like just finding the right group of people to train as hard as you safely can. Because it's like, it's who sticks it out. It's like who can last, you know, because you're putting your body under a lot of stress. It's probably the same in weightlifting where guys will push too hard, injure themselves, they're gone for 6 to 12 months, and then it's super hard for them to come back.
Yeah, if you have the wrong training partner who you're trying to hang with, who is way further along than you, or you're trying to like prove something, an ego lift, like career-ending shit can happen.
Exactly. Hard to come back. You know, I guess it's like in the gym, you have to
Do you know who Larry Wheels is?
No.
Okay, so he's like a power lifter slash, I guess he does compete in bodybuilding. He's not a pro, but he has a crazy physique and very known for his strength feats. And he has a really big YouTube channel. And often the collaborations with him on YouTube are in the gym trying to like basically do his workout with him. And it's almost become like, he's almost infamous for like not ruining careers, but like putting you in positions that are very likely to, you feel pressured to overextend past what you can do to try and like hang for the video, and people just like blowing out their packs, like fucking themselves up and getting like multi-year injuries. And for bodybuilding too, the cosmetic appearance of something ripped off the bone and then reattached is not necessarily and ever going to be the same.
He's sabotaging him.
So, but like, and it's, I'm sure he has no intention of this. He's just a guy who loves training and invites people to train with him. And that's how he likes to do it. But it's a good example of like, pick the right training partner and know your limit, I think. I'm sure for BJJ, there's probably similarities where there's, you know, you go train with somebody and then you feel like you have to show them up with some crazy submission or like whatever. And what are some of the things you see?
Oh, yeah. I mean, guys just not wanting to tap, getting popped.
They show how tough they are and then just like fucking tear their knee or something.
And then obviously that's an ego-based decision. So when they have to take time off from the sport, if you take time off to recover an injury, when you come back, other guys have gotten better.
Yeah.
So the prospect of returning to the sport to lose to people you were better than already puts a big wall up. So it's like most of the guys that I started training with, like, there's a reason very few make it to black belt, let alone make it to higher echelon in the competition. It's just fought to the death every day, or overtrains, or like just doing crazy shit, just ego-based decisions, and they've just never made it to the end. Some guys just unfortunately have brittle bodies. It seems like some people are just predisposed to catastrophic injuries. And I would say maybe jiu-jitsu is not not for them, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that would be number one for me, is like trying to mitigate injuries, because you don't want to have those injuries when you finally make the higher level competition and you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like you're like, guys will, like you will have, say you get your knee popped, it could be close to 100%, but it's almost like you've got PTSD from the injury.
Right.
And then you compete, and the next time someone gets close to it, they're tapped straight away. They're so scared of an injury again. So
Yeah.
it's like avoiding any of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people too, and this we'll probably circle back to this, are really focused on the jacked physiques and the anabolic steroid use, but often people don't realize like the real injury proofing yourself through things that enhance like connective tissue integrity and compounds that work off of healing mechanisms more so than just like hypertrophy is almost most advantageous, I would say, for BJJ. And I think it goes overlooked by people who think everyone's just on test trend, whatever, get crazy aggression, get jacked, and that's how you win. But like, it sounds like it's just as important to just make sure you don't fuck yourself up.
Yeah, train safely. And some of those guys like that just get juiced out of their minds for jiu-jitsu. Like it's almost like their technique gets worse, because now they're,
It's like a crutch almost.
yeah, now they feel like, oh shit, I can overpower everyone.
Flexibility gets
Yeah, it gets
horrible.
diminished. Yeah.
So it depends on the person, obviously, but like even when I got at my biggest, I almost couldn't teach swimming lessons anymore. I was like, I don't know, 20 years old
Oh, you
teaching.
couldn't-
Yeah, I was trying to do back crawl, and my delt would literally like not allow me to do the back crawl properly and show the kids how to do it. So, and I would sink like a rock too. It would be way harder to float. Things you don't think about until it happens.
Yeah. Fuck that. Yeah. For jiu-jitsu getting massive, it's probably definitely not a great decision, I think.
Like gas out quicker. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a bad gas tank as it is. So like to get just fucking, well, at least that's what I tell myself.
Yeah. So the B team. So is this who came up with the idea, and what's like, I don't know, the inception days look like?
Well, we had a team. It was the DDS, Danaher Death Squad. We had this team. It was in New York. We trained at a gym called Henzo Grace. It was like a team within a team. COVID hit. We left New York. We went to Puerto Rico. There was already problems within the team, you know, like
Like
bands,
interpersonal conflict?
yeah, like bands break up. You know, it's hard to keep things for long periods of time. So the team was already having some issues. Being in Puerto Rico made those issues worse. There were personal problems between other people. So we split up. We took our team to Austin. They also ended up in Austin, but just as a little lighthearted fun, because Danaher, our old coach, he would have the team, and if you weren't a part of that elite level team, that was elite level group of individuals that were always winning, you would be called a junior. So you could be a fully grown man, and he'd refer to you as a junior, which is obviously pretty condescending. But of the core team, it would have been Gordon, Gary Toner, me, Nicky Rod, Nicky Ryan would be considered kind of the senior members of the team. Me, Nicky Ryan, Nicky Rod, Ethan Crelinsten. We moved and we opened our own team. So we basically split down the middle. And then they took over North Austin. We took over South Austin. And that's kind of where we're at today. Pretty strange. We went to Puerto Rico together. We went to Austin together, but we separated. It's hard to manage the egos. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like hard to manage that many athletes for a long enough period of time, even on a small scale. Like you'll see in every jiu-jitsu gym, things will be great. And as time progresses, egos get bigger because the guys are getting better. The teams will split. So there'll be a guy that's like a brown belt that'll just move and open a gym somewhere else. It just seems like an inevitable part of close relationships in the jiu-jitsu world.
Let's talk about just a high level. When people hear black belt, they think of, okay, you're the pinnacle of your discipline. Presumably, a lot of people would. What does it take to become a black belt in this specifically? And what does it mean? Like,
It just me. It depends who gave it to you. It's honestly just a trick. It's like a marketing trick to keep people hooked. You know, it's the reason why people do jiu-jitsu longer than they do kickboxing or boxing classes. It's a hook to keep you invested. It's like a multi-level marketing scheme. You know, it's like they want to get the blue belt. Yeah. They want to get the purple belt.
I guess it's a cheap belt to make too. Like it's just like fabric, right?
It's brilliant. And the black belt has a long established history in all martial arts. So it really is just a marketing strategy to hook people into the sport and make them feel special and validated. But at the end of the day, like you could be a shitty black belt. You know what I mean? A black belt doesn't prevent or mean anything at the end of the day. You're only as good as how you could train and perform. So it is, in my opinion, a marketing trick. However, if you're talking to a female that doesn't train, then a black belt signifies something of great importance, discipline.
Right.
It means other different things to different people, you know.
Is it like the athletic equivalent of a PhD?
I would say so, yeah. I guess you could have a PhD and be an idiot, and I get, but you could definitely have a jiu-jitsu black belt and be completely terrible.
Okay. So, like in general, start to finish, how long does it take to get one?
You could, if you dedicate yourself every day, train really hard, you could really get it in 4 to 5 years. Be difficult, but you could.
Is there any corrupt people who just like
I'll sell it for whatever, you know, like you give me enough money.
Is there some sort of like certification process whereby it's like you cross-reference if it's a legit black belt or?
Not really. There's a tournament, the IBJJF, which is the longest running gi world championships in the world, and they have a bunch of criteria for what you need to be accredited with them, and so that you can compete with them, or you could have a team where your students compete. But it's a whole lot of confusing stuff. And they have rules where it's like, I believe you have to have 3 stripes on your black belt to give a black belt. Like, they have all these rules. So they try to control.
Oh, so there's levels above it too.
Yeah, so there's stripes on the black belt.
What's like the pinnacle?
The red belt. But I believe that's only for if you've been a black belt for 30 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah, but that's like the highest level of Scientology, you know? Only very few.
It's like when you hit the Super Saiyan you didn't even know existed, and all of a sudden you're like this thing that doesn't even look like the previous iterations.
Yeah, it's because it's bizarre. Because by the time you get a red belt, you got half a foot in the grave, you know? So what does the belt matter if you can't train properly?
Huh. Interesting. So like, I find this actually really fascinating. So you go from white to black. The transition is how many colors between?
So white to blue. You go blue to purple, purple to brown, brown to black. And then you could do stripes on those belts too. So it'd be 4 stripes on white belt, 4 stripes on blue belt, 4 stripes on purple.
But you don't need to. You could just jump maybe.
No, most people do it for white belt and blue belt because they need the most validation. You know what I mean? Okay. Things are so bad. In the gym, they're getting bashed. They don't know anything. They feel like a fish out of water. That they need a little something to keep them going, to feel really good about themselves.
Right.
You know, and that's the trick to keep them in the game. But really.
So you're getting a raise in your job or something? You're getting like a little bit of a...
Well, it's like a flex. You just got to walk onto the mats and look at everyone below you in the belt structure like peasants, really. That's the feeling that these people are going for, I think.
Right. Oh, yeah, because it's like a visual status cue as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's really a marketing strategy. I think that's why it's taken hold so well.
Yeah. Huh. So 4 to 5 years to get the black belt.
If you trained every day. Most people take about 10 years.
So presumably you, Nicky Rod, Gordon, top guys all have black belts, or is it?
Yes, yeah, we all got the black belt.
Okay. What about the stripes?
I don't know how many stripes. I think I'm 2 or 3 stripes. You're meant to get an X amount. Here's the weird thing. Once you get a black belt, you just get it based on pure time, which I think the first 2 stripes are 3 years each. Honestly, I couldn't even tell.
It's like, how would they regulate how much time you're investing into getting the stripes, though?
By paying a membership with the IBJJF so that they can track that you're still a black belt, apparently. Yeah.
Is it harder to get a black belt through, like, Danaher than elsewhere, for example?
Yeah, for sure. He will be pretty tough. He'd be probably one of the most strict.
So presumably it means more to have like a Danaher black belt than...
It does mean more, but he also does it in a brilliant way because he'll keep his students who are elite level students below the level of black belt so that he can now send those students out into the world to beat black belts and go, look how brilliant this guy is. He just destroyed a black belt. But that black belt could be a bus driver or something, you know? So it's like, it's a very genius approach. He'll be like, my junior beat this world champion black belt.
Right. Damn. So there is like a big marketing component around it for sure.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's all marketing at the end of the day, I think.
That's crazy, man. So all in 4 to 5 years if you're going hard, and realistically 10 for most people.
For most people, 10, yeah. You'd have to be really, really good. I think 4 to 5 years, you train every day and you had successful competition results, it could easily be justified. IBJJF's meant to put restrictions on how long you're meant to be at each belt, but most people don't pay attention to the IBJJF rules too much unless their school's heavily focused on competing in that rule set.
What is like the time, and like you said, every day working your ass off, like what does it look like to be a high level athlete in this sport in general? Like time commitment wise, what does a typical week look like?
I'll be saying probably 2 sessions a day, probably 90 minutes of rolling per day, probably 60 to 90 minutes of technique. That would be about a pretty good level, but it is hard to maintain, and it depends who your training partners are. Like if you're fortunate enough to be in a gym where there's a bunch of guys of equal level, then that 90 minutes of rolling is going to be hard work. But obviously if a lot of gyms, there'll be one guy that's better than everyone else. He can train, play with the guys however he wants to. He can go as hard as he wants to, so he can be more in control. So it's a very individual thing, I would say.
So who gives out the black belts at B team?
Me when I'm there, but I'm never there.
So you guys just have a closet full of them and you just fucking...
Pretty much. We don't give them out too often. You know what I mean? Like it's like...
What do you do? Just like order from the black belt store? Like
yeah, from the black belt store, Amazon, unwrap it, give it to the guy, you know? We gave it to Nicky on his podcast. We surprised him on his podcast with it. Because we're no gi only, basically. So there's really even no purpose to having a belt.
Right.
It's just ornamental.
So when do you actually get to show it off, if ever? Do people put in their Instagram bios it's like an Instagram verification thing? Or?
I imagine they would, yeah. Or on Reddit, they'll put their flair as black belt now, yeah. Something.
Is there a big overlap between jiu-jitsu athletes and being on Reddit?
Yeah, I think the subreddit there's be like 1 million people on there.
Holy shit. Are you a regular? Or are you just like a casual?
I cruise in and look to anyone that doesn't like me and throw in anonymous comments agreeing with
type in the search like Craig Jones every week and
sort every hour.
Oh, man. So if you were to break down, I don't know, like training in a week for somebody who's trying to progress, you would say, like, presumably it's not feasible to do what you just outlined for a typical person. Like somebody who's wanting to become good in general, what does that look like in terms of like allocation to strength training, if any, weights, endurance work, or is it mostly just technique stuff and you focus on the rest of it later, or what do you think?
I mean, it's a good question because it's going to shape up depending on what you've got coming up. You might tailor your training to be less technique focused, more rolling focused if you've got a competition coming up.
Yeah. And like, obviously I know the question is so general when it would be hyper nuanced for an individual based on whatever their strengths and weaknesses are. Are they frail and need to get in the gym versus not? In general, if you had a guy entering the B team though, and you're like trying to just gauge where he's at and he's, I want to progress as fast as possible. What is kind of like your feeler month to like figure out what he needs sort of thing? Like what's it look like?
Yeah, true. I mean, you'd want to observe him in the gym to see how he stacks up against other guys in the gym and try to identify why he's losing to these people. Like, is he massively overpowered strength-wise? Then you probably recommend the gym. Is his conditioning terrible? Then you might recommend doing cardio, but you also might recommend more technique because the better your technique is, the less tired your opponents will be able to make you because you'll be in sort of more control of what's taking place. I think sometimes guys that get tired quick could be a lack of efficient movement, where they just don't have the answers. So they're getting put in positions where they panic and just, use all their energy. You know, anytime you're panicking in jiu-jitsu, you're going to burn energy straight away. So it's like sometimes these guys are too tense. But yeah, really individual basis, you know?
One of the, like, learning the techniques though, like I know people sell instructionals and there's different ways to go about learning now versus however long ago. Technique development, is that something that is best done? Like you kind of get an assessment off of, like, how did you learn to start versus what is the ideal way to go about it now, do you think? Like for learning submissions, for example.
I honestly think, and I shouldn't say this because I sell instructionals, but instructionals, the best way to learn would be to observe rolling footage or match footage and break it down sort of frame by frame and really try to work out why something just occurred. Try to work it out for yourself. I feel like when you figure something out for yourself, you remember it, but when you're told about how something works, you kind of like, it doesn't attach as well. So I think your own ability to problem solve trumps everything else. So watching instructionals, they're just giving you the answers. But if you're encountering a problem, you're still going to learn much better. Maybe problem solving it with a teammate, watching a scenario in competition or in training footage and try to reverse engineer it. Well, I think the best way to train if time isn't a problem would be to just focus on the rolling and use technique to problem solve. Whereas the standard best way to operate a jiu-jitsu business would be the guy shows up without having thought about much about jiu-jitsu because he's had a 9 to 5 job. He wants to be given some technique. You give him general technique, might do some positional rounds, rolling, go home. That's going to be a very slow way to learn. But from a position of operating a jiu-jitsu gym that wants to make money, that's the best way to do it. But the best way to learn would be to have students that are engaged, learning at home. They show up to the gym to test it out in rolling, positional sparring, and as a group, problem solve afterwards. But again, that's not the best way to run a business because most people, they want to just show up and be gifted some knowledge.
Right. Do you have some favorite submissions that you think have like a good learning curve or something that are effective and easily assimilated for like actually integrating into a high pressure situation that you could actually execute on it?
I still think leg locks, if you want to attack the legs, is still a thing most people are terrified of. So they get that panic response when someone's attacking their legs. And it's still generally not taught to the upper belt. So it's like if you were to take a beginner and teach him some leg locks, I think you'd probably have the sharpest return on your investment of time. But will it make you a better grappler overall? You still need to develop a well-balanced game. So it's like, it's hard to explain in terms of submissions. I think like the best way to submit someone is to get them tired and then they kind of quitting and gifting you something. But it might look like a very technical setup, but your ability to fatigue your opponent to a point where they have nothing left is still going to be the best path to submission, where you're basically taking what they give you.
How about like a tiers list? So like if you have a guy who's fatigued, what are the 3 easiest submissions to hit versus the 3 hardest? Because like you see in movies, stuff happen all the time. You see these crazy flying arm bars, and obviously it's probably almost impossible to hit some of these things you see in some like the, cinematic stuff. Like, what do you think would be like 3 top ones you should know and 3 ones that maybe have been hyped but are kind of shitty?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if the guy's already tired, like just presuming he's tired, you've passed and you're in mount position here. Like, I think just applying so much pressure to them that they want to give you the back. Like in MMA, guys will throw some strikes. The guy doesn't want to get hit. He turns over, he gives up the back, presents the back. And then you've got the best submission there would be like a rear naked. I think any submission that keeps you in top position, so for jiu-jitsu, like an arm triangle or still applying so much sort of smothering pressure that they want to turn, nothing will ever beat that, just remaining in top. If you've got a guy tired, he might give you an arm, but he will have good enough armbar defense to maybe take a pop and then you end up on bottom. Or if you go for a triangle from mount, you might end up on bottom. So risk reward, that's a big risk. In MMA, guys go less for those submissions because the risk is greater. If they're in top, they go for an armbar, end up on bottom. Now they can get punched in the head. At least in jiu-jitsu, guys will do that more because worst case scenario, we're in bottom.
Right.
What's the worst that could happen? So tier list. I mean, if we're talking about submission tier list, what is your end game? You know, if your end game is to humiliate your opponent, then there'll be a class of submissions that you know, like you're really gonna,
Sure.
it's gonna bother them to get hit
Let's
with.
just say you want to win a competition. Like, what do you think are the ones you should master first? And then the ones that are probably, you're almost never going to get in a position to hit this. And
Whoa.
even if you would, it's like very unlikely to work.
I mean, buggy choke it's effective, but it is kind of a crazy one. And it's one that if you got them, they'd be really pissed off in competition. But it's a high risk, high reward sort of move. Heel hooks would still, I mean, it changes over time because it's like someone will introduce a new submission or they'll repopularize something and then it has an incredible success rate because people aren't prepared for it.
Right.
And then over years of it happening, now people start to understand that and it kind of falls out of favor. So it kind of goes through waves of popularity. Oftentimes it'll be an old move that's repopularized that a generation thinks, oh, it's a new thing. So it goes through it goes through cycles, I would say, of popularity of submissions. And it's what people are least prepared for will have the best success. And that's kind of where the instructional market comes in. You're selling something that has value at the time because people don't remember it or don't understand it.
If I wanted to see the craziest submission you've ever hit, what would I type in?
It would be me against Vinny Margalesh because so this guy was a guy that was notorious for not getting leg locked. And he used to say heel hooks don't work. And I had a match with him, put him in a heel hook, and he had a spiral fracture of his fibula and his ankle completely dislocated from his leg within I think 30 seconds.
Jesus.
He didn't even have time to really tap. He just let his leg snap straight away. That's the most disturbing. And he doesn't tap. And it does a full 360.
Oh.
And I could see his bone poking into his skin like I was about to poke out. So that's probably the most disturbing one. Also the most
Yeah, does it fuck with you? Seeing that kind of thing?
kind of, but it's almost it's like, what's wrong with you? Well, like, why are you doing that? Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? Like, who cares, bro? Just tap, you know?
Right.
Why would you make you do this to me? Like, why would you make me do this to you?
Yeah. Damn, dude. That's crazy. So these instructionals, is that the primary way people monetize in the sport? Because the prize money in competition is not significant?
Yeah, 100%. That's the greatest thing to ever happen to jiu-jitsu athletes would be BJJ fanatics because they pay, like people it still boggles my mind how much people will spend on instructionals, how many they'll buy. Because obviously they have value. Like you can understand things through the instructionals. They do have value. But it's crazy. I mean, I guess there's a whole new wave of white belts and blue belts all the time, beginners starting, and then buying a bunch of instructionals. And that is going to make them better. Anything you put forth into the sport's going to make you better. But I guess they're just looking for shortcuts. And at the end of the day, instructionals provide knowledge, but it's not a shortcut. So It's like, it is a massive cash cow. And there's also no guarantee that competition success translates to instructional success. Because some guys win competitions in boring ways, ways that you might not want to replicate.
Right.
So if you win something like ADCC and you don't submit anyone, no one at home is going to go, oh, fuck, how did he do that?
Right.
You know, so it's like those people will have the medal, but they won't have anything to sell. Like if that guy teaches a seminar, it's like, what are we going to learn? How to just push each other for fucking 40 minutes?
So is it actually hard to find instructionals on certain techniques online because everyone paywalls them? Or is it, because like, for example, and this is probably not apples to apples, but like if I want to learn how to do a stiff-legged deadlift, I would just go, obviously there are paywalled exercise programs that people buy from, credible creators, but oftentimes you'll still find those same credible creators making the content for free. It's just like packaged differently, I guess. It'll be like, here's literally how to do the lift start to finish. Like, is it actually that hard to learn without it? Or like, what do you get out of it that is?
I mean, you could learn it without it. It's just might take you a little bit longer.
Sure.
Like it's like name recognition, I guess, is a form of like, there's something to it. Like if Gordon Ryan goes out there and wins everything, then you're going to hope that he has the ability to teach that technique. and a guy like Gordon does. But not all of the athletes, especially some of them have a language barrier. Like if you're a world champion from Brazil, but you haven't mastered English, then you're still not going to sell many instructionals because we can't understand what you're saying. There's no nuance to how you describe it. So it is mostly paywall. There is a lot of great free information out there, but you'd have to track it down. There's almost too much free content. And you as a beginner, it's going to be, you might find a guy teaching Gordon's techniques identical free on YouTube, but the surest way that you know that it's a quality technique would be to go to the name rather than dig through the sort of endless YouTube jiu-jitsu techniques.
Yeah. What would the earning potential look like for a elite athlete in the sport now compared to MMA, compared to like, well, I guess it's pretty easy to see what it would pay to be in like a professional sport because the salaries are all like public essentially. Like, what does that look like in terms of at the highest level for, I don't know, your instructionals are selling, have a YouTube presence, like whatever it is?
I mean, I would say six figures pretty easy. I mean, for a top 20 guy in the world, I would hope so. But again,
you're not even sure if a top 20 guy would make $100,000 a year.
Yeah, because some of the guys won't do anything else. I mean, here's the thing. It's like he might be the 10th best guy in the world, but he doesn't do any social media. He doesn't, you know what I mean? He can barely understand how to promote a product. He doesn't want to travel. He wants to stay in his routine.
Isn't it kind of wild though? Like when you outlined what it takes to accelerate your progress and be in the gym for that long, and you have to somehow also rest enough, eat a good diet, probably work your 8-hour job, and then also try and build a side hustle of social media. Like I can't, it seems like impossible.
Yeah. It's better to just pretend to be the second best and spend all your time on social media.
That's funny.
It's a better use of time, I think. Yeah, okay. Some of those guys, man, like here's the thing. It's like if a guy's won ADCC and he's still teaching classes at night, you're like,
there's a disconnect here.
What did you win ADCC for? You should be able to monetize basically an Olympic gold medal. Like if it has that much intrinsic value, you should be able to monetize having that into just teaching the techniques one time and release a product rather than run a school. You know what I mean? It should have enough value. But people, that's the lie people are told. Whereas like anything, it's like who's better at marketing is what's going to sell, make you the most money.
Yeah, but it almost sounds like if you were better at making exciting YouTube videos and you were like not even that good at jiu-jitsu and never won anything, you might be better off.
Tons of guys don't even compete would make more money than the elite level competitors.
Damn, dude. Okay, so that brings us to competition and top prizes. It sounds like best case scenario, if you win the most elite competition in the world, which is ADCC presumably, what do you get? You
get $10,000. That's not to qualify or get invited, and then to do like basically a 3-month training camp. Fourth place, $1,000. Third place is $3,000. Second place, $6,000. First place, $10,000.
And how many people compete in totality?
16 per division, and there'd be a 66 kilo, 77, 88, 99, and an over 99. And then obviously there'd be 3 women's divisions and an open weight for each. The open weight for each would be $40,000 for the first place. But again, if you just happen to be 66 kilos, open weight's out of the question for you. You know what I mean? It just heavily favors the big guys.
Yeah.
So we put on a tournament with $1 million prize money. So you obviously have to win ADCC 100 times to get that amount of money.
So so it started with this anonymous donator who is, what do they get out of it? Just out of curiosity. Like it's anonymous, but they just want to see the thing come to fruition, or?
He's in it. Obviously, he loves jiu-jitsu. He wants to go to the sport of jiu-jitsu, but he's also in it for the laugh. You know, he thought it was funny. You know what I mean? To give a maniac some money to just disrupt an industry for the better and enjoy watching it unfold. And
are they going to stay anonymous even after the thing's done, or?
Yeah, I mean, the way we've set it up, I mean, you could probably find a way to track down who it is. I've misled people by pretending the money, like, because I was in UK, I was pretending I sold a couple missiles over there and I got the money. Like, I've been in UAE, so to some people, I pretend it's coming from royalty over there. I just mislead people. Some people think it's coming from Zuckerberg. I just keep misleading people.
Yeah.
But the guy is actually, he's just anonymous guy. He's just doing it for a bit of fun. He enjoys watching the chaos. This guy.
So is he going to be there? Just no one will know he's there?
He's working on his visa right now, actually. But I'm not sure if he'll get a visa. But he is.
So he doesn't live in
the US. But the funny thing about this whole thing is he's on Instagram. So the ADCC organizer, when we first kicked this off, Mo Jassim used to go on ADCC live all the time. And he'd be commenting. Like, he'd be talking and reading comments and stuff. And the actual guy funding me, early days when no one believed I could do this, commented to Mo. He's like, where do you think Craig will get the money from? And Mo's like, he doesn't have the money. He's not going to do a tournament. While talking to the guy funding the tournament.
Damn.
Without knowing it.
That's crazy. So you mentioned your motivation to start the thing, though, was like on a whim. They were like, go start your own tournament or something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, people kept asking me if I would do ADCC again. And I'm like, for what? For $10,000? I'm like, that's a huge investment of time, energy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm short of time as it is. And they're just like, the organizer was like, just be grateful that we give you a platform to compete on. You're competing for exposure.
Yeah.
And then this guy got wind of it, supported me in this endeavor, and basically it's just all blossomed from there. But yeah, like, I would say this. It's
so
like,
did you post this conversation that, like, look at this out, like, what ADCC is doing to their athletes sort of thing, and then he got wind of that? Or how does they even find out?
I started very delicately with just a video that was basically like answering the fans' questions, am I going to do ADCC? And I just said, hey, it would be nice if we got compensated more, considering they can sell out T-Mobile and they can sell the streaming rights. It was very nice. But we're dealing with a very sensitive group of people who overreacted to the initial video with just a condescending, obnoxious energy. And it's like, then once you get the funding, it's like, again, one of them was like, oh, like, if you don't like T-Mobile costs $2 million, get your own $2 million, run your own event. And I was like, okay. I would say this has required a lot of energy to do this. And for the most part, it's all for a positive cause. We're giving proceeds to charity from ticket sales. We could have put this behind a paywall. We're streaming it free on YouTube. And we're paying the athletes. It always started, first and foremost, to get the athletes paid. I will say, you can work an 8-hour day on positivity, but you work a 12-hour day on pettiness. So their obnoxious, condescending energy has inspired me to new levels of productivity to take them down.
Yeah. No, it's awesome, man. So the $1 million prize going to could you just like break down how the tournament structure will work exactly? Oh, and by the way, so Marek Health, I don't even know if we mentioned at the start of the video, but we're sponsoring this thing because we think it's really awesome what you're doing, really exciting, and I'm stoked to see it come to fruition. And obviously a high level of competition with the amount that's at stake here. So definitely cool to be a part of that. Blood work is of critical importance if you want to understand what's going on with your body, whether that be preventing disease, optimizing performance. Getting blood work done is incredibly important on at least a biannual basis, in my opinion, is what I do personally. Understandably so, knowing what to order and how to interpret it is beyond overwhelming. It's incredibly nuanced to interpret blood work with the level of rigor that is needed to actually assess the root cause of many underlying issues and or hit the perfect balance of optimization. And that's where Marek Health comes in, with highly educated coaches and medical providers who are always staying on the cutting edge, always on top of the most recent literature to give the most rigorous interpretation of your current health status, interpret if there's any ways to optimize your lifestyle, supplementation, sleep hygiene, diet, pharmacology. It's all taken into account here at Marek Health. So if you want to take control of your health and or optimize your performance, check us out, marekhealth.com.
Yeah, it'll be the best guys in the world. Unquestionably, it'll be the hardest tournament to ever win in the history of it. Well, I mean, we like to consider it like UFC 1 or something. Like we're at the forefront of this. But yeah, it'll be, here's where the pettiness comes in. ADCC pays $10,000 to the winner. We pay $10,001 to show up. So all 32 of the athletes and 2 of the 16-man brackets just get 10,001 to show up. Because I think in an event like this, you've already made it to the upper echelon. You should be getting something to show up. So 10,001 for everyone if you win $1 million. But then if you win, $1 million. So it's going to be heartbreaking if you come second.
Yeah.
You've just lost $990,000.
Damn. Yeah, so there's no tiers list in terms of...
No.
But obviously it'll produce a higher level of competition because of that.
Yeah, so much more on the line. I think if you compensate the guys better, they kind of come in better prepared.
Yeah.
Know? And it's a question of ADCC said, or the organizer said, we have the prestige of an Olympic gold medal. But again, fucking... If you walk into any McDonald's around the world and say, I'm an Olympic gold medalist, they'll be like, wow. You could say you're an ADCC gold medalist. They'll be like, what the fuck is that? You know? So it's like, it doesn't have the same prestige as an Olympic gold medal. So it shouldn't be a good analogy for what they're doing.
Yeah. So, okay. So the bracket, it would look like, so you have 32 competitors, and is it subdivided into weight categories or like, what does it look like?
Under 80 kilos, over 80 kilos, 16 guys in the under, 16 guys in the over. And we got guys like Luke Rockhold in the over. We got NCAA Division I wrestlers in the over. Under is almost entirely grapplers. And we have Jason North, who's such a high-level Penn State wrestler. He just beat Jordan Burroughs at the Olympic trials, but he lost to Kyle Dake in the final. But basically, elite-level grappling in all forms. So we got some wrestlers in there, but for the most part, jiu-jitsu guys.
And then if you make it to the end of your 16-person bracket, it's like you each win $1 million, or like
no. So it's there'll be $1 million for the under and $1 million for the over.
Okay, so that's crazy, man. Okay,
huge prize money. So of the $3 million the guy gave us, we're giving, I would say, including super fight purses, $2.6 million to the athletes themselves. And then on top of that, whatever revenue we create off of ticket sales is going to go to charity.
And then the super fights, like these are pre-planned matchups segregated from the actual competition bracket. And those are what again?
Those would be Mackenzie Dern versus Fionn Davies, the current best women's athlete versus the previous best women's athlete from 2015. Mackenzie, UFC fighter, she went into MMA, so it took a bit to get her back. As in, she wanted to do ADCC one more time.
Yeah.
We took her from ADCC and gave her a super fight against Fionn, which would have been the match most people were interested in seeing anyway.
Yeah.
So we booked the biggest women's super fight in grappling history. We really wanted to do something special for the women because we don't have a women's division. We wanted to capture most people's attention with this event, so we were like $2 million divisions, like $1 million here, $1 million here. Obviously, as it progresses, to add in another $1 million women's division would be awesome. And we thought the way to leverage that for the future is to book the biggest women's super fight in history, throw it on YouTube, and then people will be able to see the metrics of the jump and the spike in the interest in a women's super fight. And that would help encourage getting $1 million for a women's division.
Yeah.
Because again, it is difficult to find funding for women's sports that doesn't come from the government.
Understandable. Okay, so that's one of them, and then
me versus Gabby Garcia. I've never won anything. She's won like 10, 11 world titles. She's 6'5", 300 pounds, monster.
Yeah.
And we're going to scrap it out in a very serious match. A lot of sexual tension in this one.
What is the rule set? Like, what does it look like in terms of?
It will be 3 5-minute rounds. So what happens sometimes in jiu-jitsu is that we might do a 10 or 15-minute match, and it's a slow pace. A guy gets a good position. In a jiu-jitsu match, here's one of the biggest problems. If I come out and get a good position like 2 minutes in and I don't take any risks, I might be able to keep the guy there the whole match. That's fucking boring to watch. Like there's matches where you take a guy's back and you literally think in your head during the match, you're like, I've won it as long as I don't fuck up.
Yeah.
So we wanted rounds to break it up. So it's like in the qualifying rounds, 3 by 5 minutes to reflect UFC, MMA, capture their audience's attention, keep it simple, score in a similar way, 10-point must. But also we like it for jiu-jitsu because it won't let you ride out a position. It's like, hey, you took the guy's back, try to submit him, you're going to lose that position and start standing again. And I like that because it punishes inactivity, even from the guy that's in a good position. So that's sort of why we've shifted up the rules. The other thing we've changed is jiu-jitsu is usually on just mats, and there's an out of bounds. ADCC, there's a lot of time spent resetting. Two guys go out of bounds, they grab them, they reset them. In regular wrestling, they have push-out rules, or if you take 2 or 3 steps back, they'll be like, bang, you're on the shot clock, you're getting penalized. Jiu-Jitsu doesn't typically have that. So tons of time is spent with the stop, reset, and they try to reset up a position. We're using, inspired by karate combat, this pit. We call it the alley because it's a rectangle, but it's like basically an angled wall. So obviously UFC's got that vertical cage. That's not great for pure grappling because it can stagnate there. You can spend a lot of time against the cage. 5 minutes fly by in cage wrestling. However, when you have that angled wall, for you to back up into it is a massive disadvantage to you. Because if you shoot a takedown, you're not falling against a flat surface or a vertical surface, you're falling backwards.
Right.
So we wanted to create a way that there were very few resets, very few restarts, and it would punish you for being evasive of your opponent. So we're trying to use the structure to create more exciting matches than necessarily just, penalty, penalty, penalty. So we've changed everything about grappling with that.
So it's like that, sort of like a 45-degree slanted. Okay.
Yeah, matted wall. And it's like, it's unique for everyone. So it adds a new dimension. People are building their own walls, angled walls in their gyms to prepare for this.
Wow, that's crazy.
So no one will have too much experience in the angled wall, so it throws in a new factor.
And then watching it, you're from above, and it's
so it's expensive as fuck because if you think about it, usually it's an elevated stage that's just flat. It's an elevated octagon, or it's a flat mat space. So ADCC, it's easy. Slap some mats down in a stadium, everyone looks down. We had to build a structure around it to elevate the seating around it, because the last thing you'd want is to buy a fucking VIP seat and the angled wall starts here and you're like trying to see over it. So we've elevated the staging around it. So we've spared no expense, but it's obviously, it's for a good cause. It's for the betterment of the sport, I would say.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. This, like, presumably you want this to be an annual thing. It's gonna, if it does well enough, it's gonna be
every year. If it does well enough, that's the plan.
What about the anonymous donor guy? Is he into recurring with the?
He's into it, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously based on the success of the event. But we also think that, like, ADCC is funded still by Sheikh Tarnoon. He gives a gesture of prize money, which would be X amount. We know the streaming rights for an ADCC-like event can sell for a significant amount of money, at least 7 figures, at least, right? So there alone, you've probably already got 1.5 million of funding towards an event. We know ticket sales revenue. You can look at what ADCC sells at Thomas & Mack previously. And now combining all those things, you're already getting to a point where you would have the funding without the investor to know that you could do this again. All we'd need to hit is that $3 million mark. So it's a good test to showcase, because we basically believe that ADCC spent their money incorrectly. Thomas & Mack Event Center, ADCC's previous venue, cost $200,000 for 3 days. This year they're doing it at T-Mobile, just $2 million. And you're like, it's only 4,000 more seats or something. It's like, why have you just now misappropriated the funds? Stay at the original venue, pay the athletes. You know what I mean? Like, it's a prestige move, but it's a lateral move, you know? Like, so it's like, we're using this one as a real test to a theory that you could make an event that compensates the athletes and is a good experience for the fans.
Yeah. Do you envision it being called Craig Jones Invitational, like, long term?
We'll probably change that. I don't know what we'll call it. Something. We want, actually, because we had the B team and there's the ADCC, we almost went with BDCC.
Okay.
But we were like, maybe we'll get sued. We won't call it that. We'll call it Craig Jones Invitational.
What does ADCC stand for?
Abu Dhabi Combat Club, because Sheikh Tarnoon's from Abu Dhabi. He started it. He's actually got an interesting story. He studied in America, and he's like royalty over there. He started in America training jiu-jitsu, just loved it, and he trained anonymously at a gym, didn't tell anyone who he was. And then at the end of his 10 years studying, and he was going back to Abu Dhabi, he invited some of the guys from the gym. He's like, do you want to come to my country? And they're like, my country. And then they went there and realized who he was. And his passion for jiu-jitsu started the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, and then he still funds part of it, but for the most part, the event organizer plans everything and does everything, but he's still sort of funding that from afar.
Okay.
But he's on to, I think he's a security, he's in charge of security for all of UAE, so he's a high up government role.
Damn.
He's pretty damn busy to be messing with grappling events anyway.
Right. So we came into the picture, I don't know, like a month ago, probably. You know, I see a lot of promise in it. I think it's cool. Also, you were looking for a nationwide, kind of like more preventive medicine focused sponsor for hormone therapy and just health optimization in general. So that's why Marek's a part of this. We're stoked on it. What's your experience been like so far? Like, I know you just kind of started recently. Like, how have things been going?
Yeah, awesome. Obviously, I have a crazy travel schedule. So, like, the first cool thing was you guys sent a doctor and a nurse to where I was in the US to basically draw all my bloods to make sure I was basically to check what condition I was in, which was awesome. And then the first consult we had, he got through it, like sort of the markers, sort of small lifestyle changes we need to do. But yeah, it's been awesome so far.
Awesome. Did you feel that it was like thorough in the process by which like the detail of the diagnostics and like the insights that you got out of it and whatnot?
Definitely. The amount of bloods that came out, I don't think I've ever taken that many bloods before. So that
you've gotten blood work before, or?
Yeah, but very infrequently.
All right.
Very infrequently.
How infrequent, out of curiosity?
Oh, maybe 6 times in my life.
Okay. See, you're laughing as if it's so bad, but you'd be shocked how a lot of bodybuilders that, you know, do way worse in terms of what they expose themselves to. Some of them don't do blood work at all.
I think sometimes they don't want to know.
Yeah. It's definitely like a fear of
you
what's going to show up because you almost know it's going to be bad.
Yeah, because I was almost, it had been, I think, a year since I'd done it previous. So I was almost like, fuck. And because of the travel and the crazy schedule and a bit of partying, I was just like, oh, how's this going to look? So it's like, I guess some of the people probably have a bit of anxiety. It's probably the same reason men in general don't go to the doctor.
Yeah.
There's something there.
It can also be embarrassing going to a doctor about hormonal issues or like erectile dysfunction, or, you know, a lot of these issues are not things you want to have to like bring up to a doctor who's not specializing in this.
Yeah.
Because often your family doc, shockingly, won't really know about a lot of this stuff or how to handle it. You might just get prescribed like antidepressants or something like that. But having somebody non-judgmental, especially when you're going to be exposing yourself to PEDs, like athletes in general, I think it's pretty well known that the jiu-jitsu community is pretty enhanced.
Yeah.
It's one of the most like just obviously untested, but also like, you know, people are very obviously on shit when they go into competitions typically. So having that oversight from somebody who won't judge you for doing that, I think is critical in itself. As well as having rigorous insights into somebody who deals with elite athletes on a regular basis and won't judge you for it. I think, you know, that's why I felt strongly about it too, is because I think a lot of these guys could get help to optimize their quality of life and performance concurrently by using us. And I think, you know, I just see in the BJJ world a lot guys who are not really having a rhyme or reason even to the compounds they choose, let alone the ensuring they don't fuck themselves up while doing it. So I think there's definitely a lot of value to be had there. And I hope that we can help bring that to the community. But also, yeah, just like a badass event in general. We'll have 10 Marek Health team members on site to support and give information if anybody's interested. But yeah, we have a lot of elite athletes and some are jiu-jitsu athletes as well. And looking forward to seeing how much we can have an impact on the sport, because we want to keep people healthy for longer, avoid those injuries like you mentioned earlier. You know, if you have guys who are like cycling on and off stupidly, like the risk of injury gets pretty dramatic when it's not just what you are doing in the, like while training, it's also your infrastructure and what is supporting it from a hormonal standpoint, nutrient status, like just a myriad of things I could go into for a long time, but I will digress. But I think we're pretty competent and capable to be able to give access to high level service for anybody who's interested. So if you want to check out Marek Health while you're there, we're pumped to be a part of it. So thanks for having us on board.
Well, thanks for jumping on board. I mean, yeah, the sport definitely needs it. There's a lot of like bro science in the sport of jiu-jitsu, a lot of like, who do you consult? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's like people just don't know. So to have,
And it's even at an elite level. Like you would be considered like you're the top of your team even. And even you, it's not necessarily like,
yeah, just winging it, you know, largely.
yeah. So I feel like the more information we can get out there as well and education to teach people about how to even dig into this stuff with a level of insight that makes them confident. They're not hurting themselves, but also they're going about it the safest way possible and the most optimal way. Because some people just choose stuff that makes no sense too. Like, oh, I heard EPO will make me better endurance during BJJ.
Yeah.
So they just like, fucking juice themselves up with it. And
It's
who knows?
It's a good time to do it. And that's why I want to be upfront with what I'm taking with the public, because there's gyms out there where there's like 14-year-old kids starting cycles
Yeah.
for jiu-jitsu, you know? So it's like, you want these people to know that yeah, obviously it's not perfectly safe, but you can go about this in the safest way possible. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're just hitting the bro science, random dude at the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you have a full, I would say just like a realistic insight into what it takes to go about this in as safe of a way as possible. That's the most you can really do, because it's at the end of the day a pretty prevalent thing in the sport. And if you're going to do it, you have to know what kind of risks you're exposing yourself to. Is this a road you still want to go down? Interestingly enough, though, there are some people we might believe are natural who are world champion level, or do you think it's something that is necessary at the top of the top?
I mean, it's a good question. You know, there's some people, I think personally, that like I always say about like people like Nicky and stuff, it's easier on your ego to just be like, oh, you must be taking something. You know what I mean? It's way easier on your ego to say that. Whereas the truth is some people are just genetically gifted. I've had friends that have been like, I want to get on TRT, and I've said to them, check what your natural levels are, and they're fucking astronomically high. And you're like, you might not need to, you know, you're at the highest level of the natural range. So it's like, there are just genetically gifted people out there, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting that in sport, it's not necessarily like bodybuilding where it's literally impossible to win if you don't juice, essentially. In BJJ, there are individuals who I believe are natural, and maybe it's not common, but there are individuals that you're not forced to go on gear at like 19 just to become a good BJJ athlete. So I think that's worth stating, because a lot of people hear how drug ridden it is and they assume it's like, okay, well, I might as well get on now because it's inevitable. Not necessarily the case. You know, obviously you're at a disadvantage against the world champion if you get that far, but I mean, you certainly shouldn't be touching this stuff at 14 years old just because you heard Gordon Ryan takes gear.
Yeah, and that was his counter argument for a long time. Are you on steroids? And he'd say everyone is, and it's like, it's not true. You know, he would accuse people, but really, it's like what you do your natty and not things. At the end of the day, it's hard unless there's really obvious signs. It is hard to tell sometimes to people, like, you know what I mean? If there's no drastic weight change, it's some of these guys that you want to say are on, definitely not on. Like my former coach, Lachlan Giles, although he's naturally gets muscular from training, I personally can say that I don't think he's ever done anything. I think he'd be scared to have a full strength beer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I wouldn't say with certainty anyone at the top of the sport isn't enhanced either, but I'm just saying, like, it certainly doesn't mean just because you want to be pursuing this sport in general that you need to be taking stuff. Cause I think there's at least in the fitness industry, there's a very, it's pretty much assumed that if you're going to be competitive in any capacity, you're going to be on shit essentially, unless you're in a tested federation. Whereas in BJJ, not necessarily the case in my opinion.
No, very little testing, if any, at all.
Yeah. But even like without the testing, it doesn't mean that just to like enter a competition and like start to climb the ranks in some capacity, or even just like have fun in your gym. Like you don't need to be on shit. And, you know, we also work with natural athletes. I feel worth mentioning because it's worth seeing how to optimize your performance. Both if you're enhanced, like having oversight from that is important, but also if you're natural, like I don't want to give the opinion or the impression that we only work with enhanced people too. It's high level athletes from both sides of the spectrum. So speaking of the spectrum, you said autism and steroids is a world championship combination. So what does that, in your opinion, look like? Like, is that replicated typically, or?
I mean, if you have no social skills at all, really the only way you can express yourself is physically, which is a way to, that's a great form of doing jiu-jitsu, is a way of communicating with people if you can't express yourself verbally. I think it's a great non-verbal.
Hey, what motivated that clip? Because that was like one of your most viral clips, I think, ever.
Yeah. What motivated it? I mean, just spending time around people in jiu-jitsu, you know, they just, they lack self-awareness and social skills, and that's reflected at the highest level of the sport, you know, complete lack of self-awareness, you know, and then throwing in steroids, you're basically weaponizing autism. And that is the key to success. I think that's the perfect combo, you know?
So do you think, like, if somebody is to beat Gordon, for example, do they have to, like, what kind of level do they need to take it to or be genetically set at from like an autism perspective? Like, what is the pinnacle?
That's true. I think we need to both test for steroids and autism.
Okay.
Because obviously there's a spectrum of autism.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that. I had thought about a B team recruitment at child autism centers to get them at a very young age.
Sure.
Because it's an untapped resource, I think.
Yeah. That sounds like a solid plan. Yeah. All right. So circling back to CJI and the life-changing money, like obviously this is an amazing opportunity for anybody who otherwise is looking to monetize their skill and maybe isn't like a social media phenom or what have you. Presumably you did mention that you want this to be annual, recurring, and try and make the most of it, and hopefully have it become presumably the go-to tournament in the future. Like, do you see this kind of superseding? Do you think it's already superseded ADCC in terms of, it hasn't even happened yet, but I mean, if it goes well, as you predicted, do you think that outcome would be you are now the competition to beat sort of thing?
I think in a way it already has superseded it, because no matter what happens, if you go out there and win ADCC and then you look over to another tournament where a guy just won $1 million, are you going to feel that good? You've been robbed of that prestige. I think where the money is, the prestige is. Where the difficulty to win is, the prestige is. If we get a complete sellout of the venue, I think that's the only thing we need now to guarantee that we are the pinnacle in the sport. Again, ADCC's been selling tickets for 2 years. We basically came in when their event was already sold out. You can't sell your ADCC ticket now. No one wants to buy them on the resale market. So the only thing is if we can get that sellout, then we've achieved every goal possible. That's our sole focus now. And again, that the event runs smoothly. We have no streaming issues. You know, obviously there's a lot of technical things to go on there, but we've got the right support in all these areas within the production sort of budget to guarantee that I think this event is going to go smoothly. There's unavoidable things like Mackenzie Dern fights UFC tonight. It would be tragic if she were to get injured and pull out, because that match is so important for women's jiu-jitsu that I would hate for that to happen. Those would be the only things that would be sort of holding us back from being considered the best. Again, I think from a marketing standpoint, we've already far surpassed ADCC in its current form.
So if somebody wants to, can you still get tickets, or it's?
Yep.
Okay, so where do you go to get tickets if you want it?
You would go to the UNLV ticketing website and they'll have tickets on there.
Okay, awesome. And also streaming on YouTube as well.
YouTube, Meta, and X. So we've had a bit of help from some of the people behind those websites, so they're going to push it. So that is good. So from a streaming perspective, I think the numbers are going to be massive. It's going to be great for us. It's going to be bad for the streaming provider that ADCC uses, which is Flow Grappling, which is behind what I would say is quite an expensive paywall. Yeah. So it's like now there's an alternative for free. It's not.
Aren't those third party streaming services like typically pretty hit or miss in terms
Yes,
of,
yeah. I mean, they have produced good streams out there, but they just don't have a good reputation in the sport
oh, really? Okay.
amongst athletes or fans, unfortunately. So us providing an alternative here for free is probably going to damage them, but it's also, I think, important to have a sport like jiu-jitsu in its current state and at least one big event for free to try to lure in as many of the mass public as possible. I hope, like back in the day when Conor McGregor would fight or Ronda Rousey would fight, gyms around the world would have a bunch of people signing up to do a trial class. I'm hoping that we can do that by having this event free, that a bunch of people around the world see this and go, oh, I'm going to try out jiu-jitsu finally.
Awesome, man. So what's the YouTube channel called again?
It'll be on the B Team channel.
Okay, got it. And if anyone wants to stay in the loop or watch the updates or see how it's the highlights or anything to do with the tournament and what you're doing with it, where do they go? Your page?
Yeah, my page or the CJI official page on Instagram. This has been a grassroots social media marketing event. It's just been basically me shit posting my way to market.
Some of the memes are wild, dude.
Yeah, I've just used memes to overthrow the powerful people in the sport. You know, like a lot of people, even from the streaming provider that ADCC uses, from the guy that runs the event for ADCC and stuff, have just like either treated me in a condescending or belittling way, and then we've been able to use some kung fu to just spin that back on them in meme glory, and that's basically got the whole people on our side and really sort of a grassroots thing. But we had easy villains to target, I will say that. You know what I mean? We've been given people in the sport or surrounding the sport that was so easy to turn into memes that it's like we didn't even need much of a marketing budget other than my Instagram and our YouTube channel to just attack these people and get the fan support.
Well, awesome, man. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, everyone check it out. What is the date? August
16, 17, Las Vegas, Thomas and Mack Center.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, bro.